That's, yes, I support that. And I understand. So, I uploaded an example of the homework solutions of just like a way that you can write up that is an example. It was my homework assignment. So subjectively, I'm like, this one's great because I did it. But I think it's just like good for another example of how to write stuff, and remember that you can kind of put your own voice to it, but just making sure that you're hitting all the points that you need to.
Are you talking about the example writing?
Yeah. Homework 2 example. Another thing was, so I think, I remember last year some of the prompts for like the homework and the PEs were a little like vague, and it was hard to know what was being asked of you. So I'm going to try to like make sure that it's really clear what I want you to go over, instead of just having you have to remember what I need you to do and having the prompt be a little ambiguous. So,
I don't see that homework example.
Maybe refresh it, because I just put it up there. What'd you say?
No, that's the one, HW2 example?
Yeah.
There it is.
Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, just so it's a little bit more clear. So I'm going to try to do that. So I apologize if there's like discrepancy, and we'll just talk through it. So one thing is to make sure to, in the prompt for the homework, the null hypothesis wasn't asked for, but we need to address that because it's just like a good practice, and it's a way to ingrain it in your mind, because I know that on the prelim, they really talk about the null hypotheses for each test and what they go over and that type of thing. So going forward, we're always going to, I think almost every assignment or PE is going to have like the assumptions that you'll have to go over. You'll have to do the null hypothesis, and then reporting of the test, and a little other things sprinkled in there a little bit. So make sure to know those for the PE, because it wasn't on the homework to practice doing that. I won't like take off points if it's not there, but just try to do it for the PE next week.
When you said like to refer to the null and alternative, you mean more than just in the conclusion when we say if we're rejecting
Yes.
or rejecting?
Yes. So I'll have to look if I think it's just good practice to do the the statistical notation of it, and then also do the wording. Does that make sense? So like mu1 equals mu2, that wording, like in the packet. So, okay, I'm going to make this determination. So I feel like it'll be enough if you guys can use the statistical notation for the null and the alternative, and just use that, and then address like the wording in your conclusion of the write-up. That'll be enough. So you don't have to do like the wording and the statistical notation at the top. Does that make sense?
And so where would the statistical notation go?
So it's just going to be, I can't remember what the prompts are moving forward, but I'll just like ask you a question, like please note the statistical notation for the null and alternative, just to make it really easy, make sure that you can do it. Do you guys know how to do the, like the symbols on Word? Yeah, so I think there are keyboard ways to do it. Does anybody remember those?
There's a keyboard shortcut on Mac. It's a lot harder.
Okay, so what I typically do
It's a special character.
is,
I feel like there's got to be like a quick like
yeah,
some kind of key.
Well,
Generally, on Mac you can hold down the Alt key and put in the 4-digit ASCII code for the character, but you have to look that up.
yeah.
And you have to remember it.
So typically what I do is like M is mu, so I go to wherever you find symbol. Oh, no. Okay, so you can insert it through the symbol, or you can do
Just change
the font. Yeah. What is it under though?
the symbol.
How did I do this? Is it just symbol?
I think it might just be symbol.
Okay, yeah. So the font as symbol. So that'll bring up all kinds of. Oh, wait, no. So that's the easiest way to do it, and I just like at the top of my PEs, I would just like put a bunch out so I could just copy and paste it throughout. So that's a really easy way to do it.
So this says you can press Alt and Enter to turn the Greek layout on and off.
Okay.
And then Shift and hit a button to insert
Ooh.
uppercase, and Alt and click a button to copy a single character to the clipboard.
Okay.
I feel like there's still
That's complicated. I was like trying to do it. It wasn't working. I know there are keys. I'll have to look into it a little bit more. But that's
I know
what I always do. 'Cause
Dr. Miles,
always does it.
he knows how to do it like super easily.
Okay. So another thing that is a good practice. So I'm pretty sure that all of like the PEs, the homework are going to be kind of asking like, why did you choose this test? What's your rationale? Then the assumptions, and then asking about the reporting. So I think for the rationale, I would like you guys to practice trying to identify the variables by, are they nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio? Talking about if they're continuous or, what's the other one? Categorical. So talking about characteristics of the variables, because it's really good practice to identifying them. It's not going to be something that I'll take off. You got it? Okay. It's not going to be what?
Control Shift Q changes the keyboard
Oh,
to
shoot.
symbol, and then you can just type in from you.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, no, you're good. I won't take off points if you don't have it, but I strongly encourage you to practice this because this is going to help you when you're studying. Like, you will be able to identify them really quickly. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Does it ask for that in the prompt?
What?
Does the prompt ask for that?
No. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm trying to make it a little bit more simple for you guys because it is a lot to include in it all, but it's possible to do, but especially when you're learning. So I just really encourage you to practice doing that, basically. And it's your decision if you're going to do that or not. I think in the long run, it would help you to try to identify them. And sometimes maybe you're not sure what they are.
Is there just a list someplace? This is one of the things that I really am kind of confused about this whole process. Is like, if we have to put something down on homework or PE, why don't you just tell us what you want to put down? Like, or if there's all these, because there's a lot of random things, and I tell you, I've never once seen the null hypothesis referenced in an article ever. So doing it now, I mean, I get it, that's fine, but someone needs to put a list together that says put these things in the homework, and then we'll put it in the homework.
Okay, I can do that.
That's just the only kind of like confusing thing about all this is I feel like we keep hearing, oh, put this, that, and the other thing in there, but the prompt doesn't ask for it, and so if we're sent off to just use our judgment and fill a thing in, like just tell us what you want, we'll put it there every time. It's fine.
I think another part of it is trying to practice the skill of understanding what to bring in to answer the question, and instead of prompting you about like each little thing, it's like writing a comprehensive assessment of this data and this type of like this and that. Does that make sense? Kind of like
It doesn't actually.
Doesn't?
Which it might make sense in 2 years when we have a rhythm of what particular people are looking for a particular task. But right now, it's like we walk in the door, we have whatever experiences we've had from the past, we have whatever Rosanna tells us, whatever you tell us, and we have to sort of figure out what's supposed to be there. And it doesn't feel fair mean to say that like a
Yeah.
moral implication, but it's like if you are looking for something, you just need to ask for it. And I feel like repeatedly it's been, oh, and you should have done this. Well, how would we have known?
Yeah. So, what I will respond to that with is look at the packet, because all of the stuff that we need to be hitting is in the packet. The instructional packet. That guy. For each thing.
What's the packet?
Lab 2 instructions.
I think I forwarded it to you. Wait, that's different than my homework?
Yes. So, okay. For each lab, we're going to have in-class stuff, which we'll do in class, and I'll upload all of that info so you can practice with that if you need to. They'll have an instructional packet, which goes over all the tests, all the assumptions, all of the running it in SPSS, how to write it up, what to report. So that I strongly encourage you guys to use those packets. It helped me to have them physically. I printed everything out and made a binder because it just makes sense for me tactile.
Okay, actually, it's funny actually because I don't recall anyone ever saying that's what this was. But now you have.
Yeah, I said at the beginning of. Yeah.
That's what we used last lab
Yeah.
during the class.
For the t-test.
Yeah.
Does this show how to write? Yeah.
So
Yeah, because that's the biggest thing I think that would be helpful
mhm.
for me is having a formatting.
Yeah.
A format.
So I'm sorry if it wasn't clear before, but if you're confused about how to notate the statistical, whatever it's called, statistical notation, it's there in English, what that looks like, null, alternative, normality, independence within sample for the assumptions, and then it goes into running the analysis, what you need for reporting. So T statistic, degrees of freedom, significance, rejecting the null hypothesis or failing to reject, interpreting those results in both in terms of your conclusion about the null and what the result means in the real world.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is what you will need. And I think I said before, the wording, how you word it is up to you. But these examples in here are a really good example of how to word it in a concise way, but to be clear. Does that make sense? So, and if you need to go back on normality stuff, like the basic explore functions, it's in the first lab 1 packet as well. So
there's a different one of these for every unit?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And also I do want to note though that that concern and comments was happening last year too. We were really frustrated with it because it's so that's why I'm going to try to make it easier for you guys to know with the prompts and stuff.
Yeah, well, using this as a checklist just makes all the sense in the world. I just never connected that was what it was for.
Okay. Yeah. No, and I think this is a really great way to study very simply the tests and stuff.
This is the list I would have asked for.
Okay, perfect.
That's what I used to do.
Yeah. So, and then
That's why I sent it to you.
moving forward, it's just, definitely use these. They're really helpful. Yeah, and I know it's a little frustrating because you're like, what do I include, what do I not include? And it's hard if you haven't thought about this in these terms before and you haven't, you're learning it kind of differently probably in her class, that type of thing. But what I mean by the, let's go to the prompt. Okay. So what I mean about identifying the like dependent, independent variables and like naming them, characterizing them is just like to fully understand what you're doing with the t-test, you need to understand what the variables are and what you want to do with them and what they're able to do. That'll help you better understand what tests to use, how to use them, that type of thing. So on trying to practice that skill will just help you in the long run. But to get points and stuff, I'm not going to require like that as a checklist thing. Okay. What else? Oh, I only uploaded the one data set. So did we understood how to run? I think everyone kind of hit that, understanding how to run the normality for the paired samples t-test. What variable do you use for that? Yes, the difference variable. Because there's like, because with paired samples, it's like the same person over different times, or the same score of something of two people that are connected to each other. So you're wanting to know how do these differ from each other, which is the same thing as whether or not they equal each other, but it's just kind of a different concept. So that's why we look at the difference as opposed to just that these two means don't equal each other.
Will that column always be given to us? Because I do not remember what we had to do to make this, like the new difference column.
Could be a variable.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
I think on all of the data, because like I don't know, like this part of the prompt, like the instructions is asking you to like make the data sets, but I think all of the ones that we have are like made for you, so I think it should be there. And if that comes up in the PE and there isn't a difference variable, we can like hold on, pause, let's talk about how to do this, because it is kind of confusing. But yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. So it makes you understand how to do the like paired samples t-test. Okay. And then why don't we run the, oh shoot. I'm just going to upload the data set for the second part of the homework really quick and then kind of talk about that for a second. Because I didn't do that before.
So you said you're posting a key for the homework? You're going to put up something that has all the answers?
Yes, yeah. So there is a document that of the write-up that I did for the homework last year.
Oh, okay, that's what that is. Got it.
Yeah. It's called Homework 2 Example.
Oh, okay.
on Moodle. Okay, so opening up the second data set up there. Yeah, so it's the treatment and the placebo group, which you noted that it said it was a control group, but then they were using treatment as always, which isn't a placebo necessarily. Yeah, anyway, try by that one. It's truth. Okay, so we would run the normality for this. So we would run it for the two different groups and go over normality. Yes, people of the choir? Okay. Do we want to go over that, or is that pretty good? Yes, no?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to descriptive, explore, and we'll put the blood pressure in the dependent list, and then group in the factor list to separate out the groups. And then we're going to choose all of our things that we're interested in. Normality plots with tests, histogram, and then run it. Yeah, okay, so then it's separated by the placebo in the group, or the treatment drug group. So what things would you note in your write-up for this assumption? So you do your central tendency, looking at that. So mean, median, they're pretty close. And then the skewness, kurtosis.
Range.
Yeah, and then you would look at the histogram and the normal and detrended QQ plots and make an evaluation of those. And then lastly, you would look at the tests of normality, the formal tests. Depending on the sample size, you're going to either use the Shapiro-Wilk for less than 30 N, and then above you'll use the KS test and make an evaluation of that. Yeah? Cool. So then running the independent samples t-test, you go to analyze, compare means, and then independent samples, grouping variable, blood pressure, and you don't have to press anything because everything will come out. And then defining your groups. I believe it was just one and two. So that'll pop out with your t-test. So I think a good way to organize the assumptions is knowing how many you need, so, and kind of grouping them together, like one paragraph, one sentence about each one, or depending on how much you need. So like the independence within and between groups assumption, you can probably write one sentence about that one and move on, because that one is taking into consideration their research design or the information that you have about the prompt. So either saying, oh, they use random assignment, so we can assume that independence between groups is good, whereas normality has a little bit more. And then, so the Levine's test of homogeneity of variance assumption, I think it's a good practice to kind of do 1, 2, 3 and keep those all together. But as long as you hit all of the points, it's great, but I think it's a good way to make sure that you are hitting them if you group them together. So like I'm talking about the hypotheses right now, then I'm going to talk about the assumptions, then I'll write the results. So you can kind of in your mind do a checklist, so to speak. I think everyone did the equal variances assumed correctly. So good job with that.
When do we use the bottom row again?
Significant, right?
Yeah, when the Levine's test is less than significant. So
Okay.
less than 0.0 or yeah.
Okay.
And that's when you'll use that. Yeah. Does that make sense? Otherwise, do you have any other questions for like the whole group about t-tests? Cool. Well, next week is a PE, so it'll be really fun. So normally our lab is supposed to start at 5:30. So would you guys prefer to have a little break before? No break? Okay, cool. So once you guys get done with article, we'll just see what time it is and then like start like 5 to 10 minutes later if everyone's here and ready for that, and then get out of here a little bit earlier, probably. Yeah. So again, good practice is just going over the examples in the packets or the homework again, just like practicing the running of the variables, that type of thing. Another thing that might be helpful if you are pretty confident that you can get everything. So if you start off, the PE, you run all the data in here, so you get the normality, the tests, whatever. You can go ahead and save the PDF, and then you don't have to use SPSS anymore. It can kind of get like weird to use, so that's kind of helpful sometimes because you can just like read it and look through it on the PDF. So that's everything that you can do.
So from here on out, if you don't ask for it, do you not want the output?
Yes, I do want it, because sometimes if you're something's confused or you did something wrong, I think it's important to understand where that problem is. And if, so yeah, I'm going to ask you guys to do that. Sorry, it's not, again, it's like a weird thing. But, and I'll write on the board next time what I'm expecting you. Because I think it's just, yeah, if someone's confused, I can look back and see how they ran it and what they did wrong. If the numbers are wrong, that type of thing. So it's kind of annoying to turn that in though, but yeah.
For the P, will we need to do Cohen's D?
No, you don't, no.
Okay. Will we have to decide which t-test to use?
Yes.
Okay.
So if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that you will be asked to run 2 different tests. And my assumption is that it's pretty close to the homework. I'm pretty sure. So, but it'll be a different, prompt and all that. Yeah. So you guys are free to go.